Hi, everyone. Life Coach Carissa here. I'm back with you today to talk about a concept called conscious parenting. This is such good stuff, so thought-provoking. I'm noticing that my hair is very like mohawky today. I think I'm channeling my inner rock star Pink. My daughter and I went to see her last weekend in Kentucky, and we had the most amazing, memorable experience. So I think my hair keeps getting a little bit more into a mohawk. Anyway, in this video, I am going to share with you more about what conscious parenting is and examples of how we can apply the concept of conscious parenting to our lives. I'm also going to share some insights and truth about my own experiences that I assure you did not have any resemblance to conscious parenting. So let's get into this. What is conscious parenting and where did it come from? So Dr. Shefali Saberi wrote a book called The Conscious Parent in 2010. It's rooted in Western psychology, but she defines conscious parenting as having less to do with the children and more to do with the parents and their relationship with themselves. It's more of an approach to parenting rather than like a model to follow with specific steps. So if you're looking for like, do this, 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 and this to be a conscious parent, I'm not really going to be able to give you that, but I'm going to give you a lot of different things to think about and to consider and to challenge your way of thinking, which is a really good thing. So conscious parenting really focuses on parental mindfulness, awareness, and emotional regulation. The idea is that a conscious parent will monitor their own thoughts and feelings and behaviors to be able to make intentional, thoughtful, and emotionally centered decisions when responding to their children. Dr. Shefali really advocates for us to give our children the opportunity to express who they uniquely are and to embrace their natural state of being. So traditional parenting, which is how many of us were probably raised, was, obviously it consists of a lot of different aspects, but I'm just, going to pick out a couple things here. We were raised to, how to be the perfect child, right? The be seen and not heard mentality, perhaps, to comply and follow and be obedient mentality. This sometimes did include the associating fear and shame and punishment as a part of that. And, maybe there was plenty of yelling, right? Like very dictatorship like. And, traditionally we think that it's our responsibility to mold and shape our children's future. No one gets more defensive about their issues than that of a parent. The ego is very present when we are doing anything, talking about anything with our children. So conscious parenting really calls the parents out to work on their own stuff, to raise themselves. It asks us to acknowledge that our children are born to us to create a deep internal transformation within us. I really loved that thought. Like, our children are actually here to help us evolve and grow into this different version of ourselves. I just think that's beautiful. Dr. Shefali writes in her book, placing expectations on your child instead of allowing the child's own natural inclinations to emerge spontaneously may well result in an emotional Grand Canyon between you and your child. Oh, that one really hit me because, how I can relate to the idea of an emotional Grand Canyon between me and my kids at some point in my life. Not now, but I did feel that way. So if this is challenging everything you know and is making you feel a little bit uncomfortable and you maybe even want to quit watching, that is actually a good indicator that this is something that you perhaps should digest and contemplate further. My aim in sharing this information with you is not to convince you that you need to become a conscious parent. Rather, I think it's important that we continually be open to new information that can support us in our growth and evolution as human beings. Sometimes we might say, well, I was raised that way, and look at me, I turned out fine. I did say that once. Well, to that, I would say, did you really? Did you really? Is that your truth or just something you've convinced yourself of? Many things evolve for the better in this world. Is parenting exempt from this? I don't believe so. There's a lot of different parenting approaches out there, and I think it's great that we explore them all. The problem is that when we're unconscious and unaware of what our parenting style even is, or if it's just very haphazard, depending upon how we feel as parents. So I get it. As parents, we have this overwhelming influence on the mental and physical attributes of the children we raise. That is like a hefty responsibility. But as surprising as this sounds, the influence actually starts even before the child's born. I was reading that experts say that a child's perception of the world is directly downloaded into their subconscious mind during the first 6 years of their life. And it actually even starts in the womb, which means we as children are obviously unable to choose and reject those beliefs when we're a child. Our children trust us as the parents, and so they believe and surrender to what they hear and see. And what we say and do is downloaded into their subconscious memory. So what often happens is the beliefs and behaviors of the parent often become that of the child. And once they are programmed into our subconscious mind, they have a lasting impact on who we are, who we'll become, until a point where we become aware enough and determine that we would be better served by perhaps changing them. And that is where the internal work begins. I just read this report the other day, and it's like, these are the hard facts. Our current administration just released a statement that in 2021, 2 in 5 American adults reported experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression. 2 in 5 American adults were anxious and depressed. 44% of high school students, nearly half, reported struggling with persistent feelings of sadness, of hopelessness that's been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, social media, and gun violence. That is a lot to take in, isn't it? We are not really headed in a great trajectory here. So I want all the parents to listen to this information and see if there's something else here for you that maybe you want to look at. Because what I see in my work is a pattern of anxious adults, many of whom are parents, and they're trying to do the best that they know how, but they may struggle to be able to feel calm and content in their own minds and bodies. And then those adults are trying to raise their children the best they know how. And then the kids are trying to navigate their own feelings of anxiety. I believe doing what we have always done may not be the best approach here. So I want to share some thoughts from my own parenting journey. There have been a lot of scars and pain. Many things I feared ended up happening, and the ideal vision that I had did not really come to be. But every difficult story creates an opportunity for a beautiful transformation. And that is what transpired in my life. All of my parenting challenges were there for me to take on something new, to evolve myself. Someone that I relied on greatly during my parenting journey is Mark Gregston. He's the founder of Parenting Today's Teens and Heartlight Ministries out of Texas. And he said, if you have a discipline problem, then you have a relationship problem. And if this did not turn out to be more true in my family dynamic, I didn't want to believe it at first, right? I thought, this isn't me. I'm just dealing with this. But I did come to realize that I had all this stuff within me that was like driven from my ego. I had these high expectations and desires for my kids because I didn't really go that path. I kind of had an up and down path, right? And so I was attempting to make up for something that felt off balance in me and that never felt good enough. I didn't know that I was quieting their inner voice by my strong ego being louder. I didn't do this intentionally to hurt anyone. I didn't have the knowledge. I'll share one specific memory. I recall wanting both of my kids to learn piano at various stages in their lives. I set up the lessons. I pushed them to practice. I made sure they never missed a lesson. I would make sure they have to spend time on this skill. I never really asked them at a younger age, like, do you want to play piano? Do you like playing the piano? I think it was more something like, I think you really like playing piano. You should learn this while you're young. It's easier to learn when you're young. I didn't really check with them along the way or stay in tune with their desires. Sometimes when they're little, you dismiss what they are feeling and they don't want to upset you. So sometimes they just hold it in, right? We innately want to fit in with our family and do what is pleasing. Now, some of you may think there's nothing wrong with wanting to expose your children to learn new things, especially when they're young. I hear you. But what I want to draw your attention to is to become aware of the underlying emotions that fuel your thoughts, habits, and behaviors about whatever this is. Because, for example, along the journey of, each of my kids learning piano, I didn't recognize my ego being at work. I can remember yelling at my kids to get their practice in on the piano. Like, it's somewhat embarrassing for me to admit this to you publicly, but I think it's so important to say this out loud and be vulnerable. I mean, picture this young child being yelled at constantly and harped on and berated to practice the piano. I can remember being at the annual piano concert, and I can still remember the feelings within me of wanting my child to do their best and look their best. And, play as good as that kid, or I hope they play better than that kid, or make me proud. None of that was really for my children. It was truly my ego wanting to be stroked. Ultimately, both my kids burned out on piano and wanted nothing more to do with it, which was a struggle for me because I really wanted it for them and I wanted them to continue what they'd already started. And I can see now fully that as a young child, I had an interest in playing piano. I used to play this small organ at my grandmother's house. And my parents did purchase an organ for me to play at home when I was maybe, 12, maybe around that age. But they didn't really invest in lessons, so I never learned how to play properly. I was self-taught and could only do little bits and pieces. I always had dreams of being able to play the piano, and it never happened. So now I was able to connect the dots that so much of my childhood was coming up as I now dealt with my children. My ego was in a flurry and trying to control this. This, is an example of me not being a conscious parent. I was in a state of unconsciousness. So overparenting happens when we as parents are anxious. We become so fearful and worried that if something goes wrong, we won't be able to tolerate the anxiety we will feel. This was me. I had anxiety from my own childhood traumas, and so I was always trying to avoid feeling anything that didn't feel good. And this ultimately manifested into this storybook picture of what my child's lives were supposed to look like. I had a desire for them to look a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, do good in school, be good in sports or extracurriculars. I really lost my footing in seeing them as an individual that has their own innate wisdom and desires. And this really caused so much dysfunction within our family, most definitely with our son, who was our first child. They are the ones we make all the mistakes on, right? Sorry, first children. It's probably not always true, but in some cases, I think that there is a trend there. But I'm grateful that I have an opportunity with my daughter, our second child, to change some things in my parenting approach. I've chosen to become more of a conscious parent. I have faced the discomfort of working on my own stuff so that I can allow my kids to hear their own inner voice. A voice that honestly, I was never able to hear and connect to myself as a child. It was all about making the parents happy, doing what would make the parents proud. One of my clients just reminded me of this. I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast, and someone on there, the guest, was talking about how She wasn't even in the same room with her parents, but she heard her mom and dad talking about I think the dad had a desire for one of his kids to become an engineer, and the mom talked about she wanted her daughter to be a doctor. And this child heard this. I can't remember for sure, but I thought she said she was around the age of 10, but I could be remembering that wrong. But she ended up becoming an engineer and a doctor. It was not her dream. We want to connect. We want to belong. We want to please our parents. That is innately in us. But we as parents who have more wisdom and knowledge need to understand when we are doing that sort of thing, when we are laying those sorts of ideas into our children's minds because of something that we have within us that wants it for them. So, where do you even start to learn about conscious parenting? Well, I hope this video has helped to give you a overview of it. I have compiled a just list of some random things to consider, and I'm going to share those with you. I really encourage you to read Dr. Shefali's books. She has several, but The Conscious Parent and The Parenting Map are two great ones to start with. And it really has information that will help you no matter what age your kids are. Don't feel like it's too late. It's never too late to read about these things and perhaps decide that you want to incorporate them into your approach. And then I would ask you, have you been able to find your own inner voice? Has it been muffled? Are you disconnected from it? Do you think you could connect with it often and feel the peace and joy that can come from living your authentic life? So ask yourself those questions. Remind yourself that I can have high standards, but it should never trump the happiness and well-being of my child. This applies to all of us, really. We, as the adults and our children, we can have high standards, but it should never trump well-being and happiness. Begin to become aware if you are carrying emotional baggage that is impacting how you respond to your child. Do you presume that you are greater than? You know more because you're older? I often said to my kids, like, you need to respect your elders. It sounds proper, I know. But the issue was the emotional energy that I had underneath it all. You know, we miss the fact that when our child acts out, it is our emotional energy that exists. Our energetic imprint is mixed into what is happening. So I encourage you, work on your own issues, whatever that would look like. Engage in mindfulness and self-reflection on a daily basis. This sometimes sounds so daunting, we don't want to do it, but it is so important to be mindful and to reflect on how your day has gone, how you showed up, what happened as a result of that, how you feel, how your family's feeling. Just reflect on it. See what insights, patterns you can pull from that. Another thing is to separate your emotional fantasies about what your children will do or become. Allow your children to discover the world for themselves and make their own conclusions. So really manage your expectations about this. Life was not meant to be a storybook. We were not supposed to follow a script. We are each meant for something completely different. And we as parents don't always know what that is. How many of you knew it for yourself? I changed my whole life approaching age 50. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't find it out until then. So there isn't this one way, this one path, this one script that we're all supposed to be on. There is no perfect timeline. Another one, openly communicate with your children. Kids see through the disparity between our words and our actions. I was somebody who was saying one thing and doing another, and I learned that behavior in my childhood, but just work to be more open and communicate with them and let yourself be honest about how you act and what you say, and do they match up? Or is there a disparity there? Because your kids will see that, and it will start to eventually make them question everything that you're telling them. You know, treat your children as individuals. They are not possessions. They are not ours. We don't know what they're meant for. We don't know if they're supposed to have a life that's amazing or a life that's filled with challenges. Like, treat them as individuals. Another thing is to show empathy and compassion, not just for others, but for yourself also. They say that the best things that can make our kids happy is that they see their parents happy. So I would ask you, do you have empathy and compassion for yourself? Are you happy? Because the kids are watching. Another choice is to model healthy mental and physical health habits, right? I mean, we don't have to be perfect, but are we trying? Are we trying to make good choices for ourselves, to give ourselves the best possible platform to work from, right? If you're not getting sleep, you're not going to be the best for your kids and your family or yourself, right? If you're just completely eating foods that are filling you with chemicals and they are affecting aspects of your body, how you physically feel, it's not going to have you be able to function at your most optimal best self, right? Another one that's hard is to give your children freedom and responsibility. I mean, I'm night and day from where I used to be on this, and it's just because of the experiences I've gone through. But experience maybe giving them some freedom and responsibility, and then working through that and see what happens there, right? Rather than just being more of a dictator. And last but not least, which I think is one of the most important that I want to say, is slow down. To become a conscious parent, you need to slow down in every way. And this may mean that you have to face some hard decisions. You may need to make some unconventional choices. You may need to make some emotional, ego-driven sacrifices. Just yesterday, I had a situation happen. I think I've been making really good progress, which I have with my conscious parenting. And I had a moment where I was disconnected from what my daughter was telling me. And let me tell you, they can feel that. Now, the beautiful part is that my daughter has been given the freedom to have her own authentic voice. And so she is not in fear to speak openly to me. And so she drew my attention to it. And I noticed right away that my good old ego and primitive brain was standing by wanting to respond with defensiveness. I didn't do that. I blah, blah, blah. And I actually started to go there. And then I stopped myself and said, wait, no excuses. You're right. I was not present in that moment and I was pretending to be. I will be more aware in the future. And man, what a powerful example and moment of a connection that was. So look, I know this is hard to hear. It was for me. I went to many places wanting people to fix my son, to which they would say, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a normal teenager. The problem is generally not with our kids. It lies within us. I do believe it is our responsibility to be conscious of our unconscious thought patterns, behaviors, and habits. There may just be a better way of doing this parenting thing. At least allow yourself to spend some time looking into conscious parenting and see if it would be beneficial for you and your entire family. So that is what I have for you today. Impactful ideas for us parents to consider. I appreciate you listening. If you enjoyed this video, please click that like button. And if you think this could help someone you know, please share it with them. You can also subscribe to my channel and you'll always be the first to know when a new video is released. And if you are struggling with parenting, as I did for many years, I can help. If you are struggling emotionally in any way, I am here for you. You can easily send me a message by visiting my website at lifecoachingwithcarissa.com. I would love to chat with you about the ways that I can support you to help you feel lighter, less stressed, and more in control. All right, everyone. My prayer for you is to live a life of intention and create more peace and joy in your life. We have so much control over this. We just have to become more conscious and intentional. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.